Welcome to another episode. In this episode I'm going to be showing you how to change ratios on the FTR, but the FTR is part of a family of gearboxes which includes the JFR, which this gearbox is, the F3B and even the JL gearbox. They're all more or less the same technique to change the ratios. One good thing to point out is of all the gearboxes that are out there, especially the Hewland ones, you'll never find an easier transmission to change ratios on one of these. It's actually quite a delight after working on some of the historic ones. There's no silicon involved. You need very few tools. So yeah, it's quite a joy to change ratios on. Normally the biggest hassle with changing ratios is actually removing all the clutter around the gearbox, taking the exhaust off, taking the diffuser off, wings, so on and so forth. So but once you get to the gearbox, it's quite an easy job. Go on to tools. You'll see over here I've got a selection of tools, not a huge amount you need, and there's only one really specialist tool, but without this specialist tool you cannot do it. And it's called by Hewland a reaction bar on socket. So it's a socket with an internal spline and internal spline there, and in fact both of them got internal splines. So without this you're not changing ratios, and if you can't get hold of one, I'm afraid you're going to have to see if you can borrow one, buy one, but that is an essential part of changing ratios on a JFR, FTR or even F3B. Another thing you'll see here is a drip tray. This gearbox has got no oil in it. It's one that I've been working on. It's got no oil in it, but yet you'll need a drip tray. And if you're changing in the paddock, I also strongly suggest another tray to put all the parts that you are taking out of the gearbox onto to keep them clean. Don't change ratios and just put the ratios on the floor. The problem is this gearbox is not like an engine. An engine's got its own filtration system. This gearbox has got no filtration system. So the only filtration system is when you take the oil out of the gearbox, change the oil, and put new back in again. So that's the only way the gearbox is going to get the oil is going to get filtered. So the less muck you get on the gears and the gearbox parts, the better. Okay, so I'm going to start changing ratios now. I've done some easy work. I've taken a lot of the nuts off. They're just an M8 nut with a M10 socket required to undo them. They always should have K nuts on them. There's one, and I'll put one down the bottom. The only one you need a spanner for, all of the ones around the outside, you should be able to get a speed brace on. Well, I've taken it off earlier. The only one that you can't get a speed brace on is obviously here. This one here, you can't get on, and you'll need some form of ratchet spanner to do it. Okay, taking the end cover off. If you've got a bit of time, sometimes it's just worth tapping the end cover off a little bit and letting all the oil drain out before you get oil everywhere. Again, I've got gloves on, but I'm not going to say that word obviously again. I promise not to. Right, unlike a lot of other gearboxes, as you're taking this off, don't expect a whole load of stuff to fall in your lap. It shouldn't do. The only thing that can fall off is maybe a couple of the gears at the end, but if you're careful, they should stay where they are. Okay, so there's the inside of your end cover. Fairly straightforward. One thing I forgot to say, whenever you're working on these gearboxes, you should always make sure they're in neutral before you start. Okay, it makes life a lot easier. And one thing that can happen if you do start mucking around with the gears, and I've seen it happen quite a few times, is you've got a potentiometer in the end there. So if you take it off and it's not in neutral, say first, second or third, and then you put it back to neutral and then you try putting this end cover on, what then happens is that knocks your potentiometer straight out, and unfortunately you're in for a new potentiometer. It does happen. I've seen it happen many times, and it's great if you're a potentiometer salesperson, not great if you're the mechanic that's just done it. Okay, the next thing to note on this gearbox, which is very different from especially a lot of the earlier Hewland ranges, is how the gears are ordered. This is a 6-speed, but the gears are ordered. They go from the back, they go 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 1 reverse. So they're not the conventional 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It goes, I'll go again. So that's third gear here, then fourth, fifth, sixth, drops down to second. And you might go, that's a bit stupid, why do they do that? Well, the reason they do that is called shaft flex, because the more torque goes through first, second and third gears, so they put those gears as close to the bearings as possible. So that's why it's done for a very good engineering reason. Okay, so the first job you're going to have to do is start stripping the gears out. Now, if you've got to change third gear, that is really easy. That's third gear coming off. There's a washer. I suggest you put them down in the order that they come off. So that's third gear, and you can get, there's a little spacer there you can take off as well. Okay, so now we've got to get to, this is called the pinion shaft assembly. So we've got to get the pinion shaft assembly off, and we do that by, you need a pair of circlip pliers. And this circlip is a 25mm circlip, and I suggest that you keep a fair few of them. I've got one there all ready to change, so I like putting a new circlip on every time. If you do struggle then to get this cap off, I'll take it off now and you can see what I mean. There is two little holes here for putting an M4 bolt into, and if that doesn't come off you can wind these in and that will jack this cap off. Now there are two different sizes of nuts. This is the 8mm one, and you can get a 6mm one, but you've got to have the representative caps. I mean the 10mm one, like the 8mm one like this is a B reference, and the thinner one is an A reference. It doesn't really matter which type you've got, they both work equally as well as one another. And this is where now you want the reaction bar and socket. So you put your socket on like so. Now this is a left-hand thread. The only cool thing, especially if you're a mechanic, normally left-hand thread you've got to undo it clockwise. But you're in a socket, you can actually, you're in a torque wrench, should I say. If you put that to off, that then goes the right way because it's actually forcing it in the opposite direction. And there we go. So that's undone. Doesn't take much load. I'll come to the doing up on what you do, torques you do them up to, when I come to put it back together again. As I said, it's a left-hand thread, so you can see I'm doing it clockwise. Okay, next up you've got a bearing, and when you come to put that back on, doesn't matter which way around it goes, and you've got a spacer here. Again, exactly the same. You see it's been worn on both sides. It really doesn't matter. And then we get to third gear. So if all you've got to do is change third gear, it's all you've got to do now is pop your third gear on, pop your input gear and your pinion gear on, and you're ready to go. That doesn't happen very often because life's not like that. It's normally sort of second gear, you've got changes right down the other end of the box. Now before we go any further, what we've got to do now is take the selector forks off the barrel. This is your selector barrel, and as you can see the selector forks run through these grooves, and they're all timed, so as one goes out, one goes in, one goes out. Again, when I've come to reassemble it, I'll show you what's what. But you've got to take this, what I call the barrel pin out. That comes out nice and smoothly. And here you've got your first of your hub ring, clutch ring and hub and fork assemblies. Well, again, on these you need to check around this pin that goes into the barrel and make sure there's no flats on it and it's not at all damaged, but this one's absolutely mint. And now we get to the next two gears. So you get your fourth gear, and you can take them off as a pair. And now we come to fifth, and you can actually leave that as a stack of your hubs like so. Then your next dog ring, I'll let Karen come down so she can see it. There you go. This is exactly the same as the first one we've taken off. Again, just check your nipple that sticks out, and that's fine. And yeah, another spacer and another two sets of gears. So here we have sixth gear, and on the same hub we've got 6 input. You got 6 there and second, so you can see there's a big step. Now if we go down and dive inside of the gearbox, that's your second gear input, and it's compared to third, fourth, fifth and sixth, it's a different input. So if you look at that one, for example, compared to that one, this has got a sleeve in it. So if you're ever ordering a second gear, you've got to make sure it's what they call a hubbed second gear and not a standard gear. Okay, that leaves us with the dog ring for first and second, which again is exactly the same as the other ones, and you can mix and match them and check your little tit on the top, make sure that's okay. And again, you should be checking the state of your dog rings. I know these dog rings are all okay. If they look damaged, yes, you've got to change them, and the same with the dogs on the gears. And now we've got first gear, which comes out. This is on a little hub on it, all on its own. And then we have got what we call the first gear lay shaft. So this is a complete lay shaft assembly with reverse machined on it and first machined on it. The only things to check on this, obviously, you check your teeth on your gears and check this bearing surface is nice. I mean, this one is nice, but I have seen you can get bad wear there, and up and down these splines where there's no nut to hold the stack of lay shaft gears on, the gears do rattle on this shaft and can damage the splines. That's another area to check. Okay, and we have got, if Karen can get in there, we've got reverse hiding up there, which I shall try and pull out. There you go. So I'll get up closer. This is how it comes out reverse. So if you look at this hub, you can see it's relieved on the back side and not on the front side. So that's the way it has to go in, and the dog ring is this side of the gear teeth. Okay, so we've now successfully got the gear ratios out. Always check your magnet down here, because I said there's no filtration. There's a magnet in the diff area which you can't do much about, and then there's this magnet here which collects all the filings off the teeth or other bits of metal. And always, if it is dirty, just give it a clean. Now, a simple area of maintenance as well whilst you're changing ratios is always check what you call the backlash on the gearbox. That's basically, if I get two gears, where are we? We're talking about backlash. So when you actually put the gears together, gears don't run hard in like that. They have a little bit of gap between them, and that's the backlash. And you normally hear a little bit of noise backlash. Now, if I grab this pinion shaft, it's always worth checking. You can probably hear it, that it's got backlash in it. If all of a sudden you grab that shaft and it starts moving a moderate amount, you've probably got too much backlash. Okay, so, and if you've got too much backlash, it will need adjusting. The imperial measurement for that, I'll put it up on the top of the screen what the metric one is, because I can't remember for now, but it's between 6 and 10 thou backlash you want on it. And if you have got more than that, and if you keep running it, one, it's not going to perform as well as it should do, and number two, you are damaging your final drive set and, as I said, losing performance. The other thing that can happen when you're changing ratios is this pinion shaft can come loose. It's one of two reasons. The first reason is the hopeful reason, is that the fit between the bearing and the pinion shaft, it just come a bit loose. And when you pull the ratios out, you can knock it so it starts wobbling about. So that's the best option. The worst option is your pinion bearings going. And I come into various reasons why that can go later on. But if that is moving, there's a simple way whilst you're changing ratios just to check it, and I'll show you how to check it. So you get all your hubs out of the middle of your gears and you slot them all on. You don't need to put all the gears on, you just literally need all your hubs. I should have had a spacer from first gear on that. Yeah. Right, so you can now see I've got a stack of hubs on there, and you get your nut. and you do it up to the torque, which I might as well tell you now is 70 foot-pounds, which I think in Newton meters is about 90. Right, and what you're hoping for now is, having done that, when your shaft is loose, if it's just the bearing come loose on the pinion shaft, all the hubs will push it back up together again. So if you do that and there's no float up and down, happy. I mean, it means there's no damage to your pinion bearing, so you don't have to worry about getting it sorted out. And to change that bearing is a bit of a specialist job, but if it is going, as I said, it needs changing. So that's a quick way of noticing whether it's good or bad. Okay, well, I'll take this all off again and we'll start putting the ratios back on again. Now, one thing to note on this bearing or nut on the end is never ever undo them with an impact driver, because if you undo them with an impact driver, there is not a lot between the thread and the bore of the pinion shaft. And if Karen comes down with the camera, I'll get my pointer out. If you see how thin it is in there, and when I take this nut off, there's a recess the other side of the nut, just there, and I've seen many break through here because people have been either one, over tightening, or two, using impact drivers. So please don't use an impact driver. Okay, so we've got to do the reversal. One other thing to mention before we start putting stuff back together again is always use Hewland parts. Yeah, Hewland have got their name because they've got a very good reputation in the industry. Their quality is really good, and you might find parts on an internet site that are half price. They're half price for a very good reason. So please use Hewland genuine parts. And if I have a look, all Hewland parts quite nicely now are part numbered, and they come with their etchings on them. If I can find another gear somewhere that's got the old Hewland stuff. Oh, here we are, we've got two. So we've got the new Hewland logo and the old Hewland logo. So what you're looking for is the old Hewland logo, and that one there just below my thumb is the new Hewland logo. Okay, I'll try and blow them up a bit if we can't see them on the video. Okay, right, so now we're back into putting the ratios in. If you've got to change ratios, get the ratios out. And what I always tend to do is the ratios you don't want in the gearbox, take them out and move them away so you can't get confused, and put the same ratios back in, or mix the ratios up. Ratios should always stay, once you get them out of the packet new, they should always stay as a pair. Never try mixing them up. Yeah, it just doesn't work. And you can't mix ratios from a different ratio up. So if you've got a 1922 and an 1822, you can't use the 22 off the 18 half and put it with the 19 to get yourself a different ratio. You just can't do that. So always keep the ratios together as a pair. Okay, right, I'm going to cut the video there so I can get myself ready for putting the ratios back in again. Another thing I did forget to mention, when you're checking the backlash, what you also want to check for is you want to give this pinion shaft 3 and a bit complete rotations. And the reason for that is you want to check that all your teeth are still on your crown wheel, because if you've had Guy the Gorilla driving your car and he's been jumping up and down over curbs, what can happen is you can take a crown wheel tooth off, and just one tooth. So for a driver and anybody, that's very difficult to know that's happened. So you could have a tooth floating around in your diff area that you don't know about. So if you go around and check the backlash and then all of a sudden you get a massive amount of backlash, that means you've got a serious problem. So at that point you'd have to take the diff area off and investigate. So please bear that in mind. It's always worth giving that 3 complete turns and checking the backlash all the way around. Okay, so now we're going to get back into putting the gears back in. Now the first thing to note is there is a little spacer right down the end of the gearbox. I'll try and pull it off. That always stays there. Okay, the size of that spacer, they do vary, but normally between 75 and 80 thou is about where those spacers are, and they're normally set up by the person who's built the gearbox for you. Okay, so this is probably the trickiest fork to get in, because you've got to get it in the slot down the other end, and you've also got to get past, if Karen dives in, you've got your reverse idler gear there. So you've got to get this gear past your reverse idler and then up into the fork, and remembering that the side with the hollowed out side of the hub goes in first. Right, so you push that down, and then the first thing you've got to do as you go down is get it past the reverse idler gear without it falling off the hub, which I'm trying not to get in Karen's way and do. But there we go. So I've got that down, and now I've got that up into. I'll get a torch. So I've got a torch here, so hopefully you can see if you come this side. You can see that's gone up into the hub. So that's reverse gear. So the next thing I suggest you do is put in your lay shaft. So that pops in onto the clutch shaft, meets up with reverse gear, and that's quite a simple gear to fit. Next up, we're going to first gear, and this is where you need the singular hub, and the first gear comes out facing towards you. Then we've got a clutch ring and a hub. And that goes in like that. Okay, so now we're going to put second gear on. And I've put sixth gear on the shaft already. Here's the input for sixth. And now, as I said, all these are interchangeable. It doesn't matter if you mix and match them. And then in between each, or when you get a hub with a clutch ring on it, normally below the hub for the clutch ring is a spacer, so this is the first of the spacers. And next up is your fourth and fifth gear. Obviously your fifth gear is the biggest one on the lay shaft. And again, when you're putting the hubs on, there's little kneader rollers that go between the hub and the gear. Fairly self-explanatory. You very seldom find them wearing out. They seem to have quite a longevity of life. And now we pop on fourth gear. Now next up we get into the last little tricky bit of the gearbox, which is you put this hub assembly on for fourth and third. You pop your selector fork up, and now you've got to put your rail in. So putting your rail in, you slide it carefully down the shaft. Try and pick up the reverse, which I've done. That slides in. Now initially it goes up to the case and it's not in the hole in the end of the case. So what we do now is just wriggle it around, and oops, it's gone in, and you'll see that a slight push, and that's not quite level, it's about, I don't know, 4 or 5 mil off that, but it's not sticking out a long way. Then you know you've got that in. Okay, and that's the last tricky bit of the box. We've got another spacer to put on the bottom. We've got a third gear. We've got a hub with your needle roller bearing on it. You've got third itself. Then we've got a little thrust washer to go on the bottom of the lay shaft. And you've got this washer. You can go on either way around, it really doesn't matter. Same with the bearing. And then we've got the nuts. This is a great little design on the end of this, because when you put this cap on, old school gearboxes would have used a split pin. The only thing you've got to do is you've got to keep searching around for where it lines up, because the nut does up in different places. They've been quite clever how they do it. So you just got to keep going around until you find it. There we go. That's found the right slot. And as I said, you put your new circlip on. Like so. Okay. Now I'm going to show you the rotation. So if Karen comes around the other side of me, I'm going to show you so you can actually see how it works. None of this is supported, so it doesn't work as nice as it should do, because the shafts literally aren't supported. So I shall go up, as you can see. So we should be coming up to third gear now. So this one here, boom, so that's third. You can see the movement back down to second again, first, neutral. And you see it's in neutral because obviously, I've said that word again, it's spinning over quite freely. I won't try the other gears out. I normally suggest that once you've got the box together, when put this end cover on, you check you can get all the 6 gears, because some people have been known to put the gears actually round the wrong way, so it gets to a point it'll bulk and you won't go any further. So if that does happen, unfortunately you put the gear around the wrong way. So it's quite important at this stage of the game, once you put your end cover, just to whiz through the gears to make sure that you've got all the gears. Coming to put your end cover on, it's fairly straightforward. Again, because I took the box out, the gears out when it's in neutral, you know that potentiometer's in the right place, and then you come to put your end cover on. Now sometimes if the gearbox is getting a bit worn, yes, because the lay shaft drops, you just need to get the screwdriver and sometimes give it a push up to get the lay shaft to locate in the bearing. But in this one it's gone on quite nicely. So we're going to turn that up. Put a couple of nuts on. I always just put 2 on to start with, and then check that you've got all the gears correct. Otherwise, you put all the nuts on, you've made a mistake, you've ended up got to take them all off again. So only quickly nip them up. There we go. Okay, now we want to check for the excuse me, the gears. So as I said, up is in this direction, so that's 1, 2, 3. Oh, it's not going. Dog on dog. 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we come back down again. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And neutral. You can hear it spinning over quite nicely. And then we go down to reverse. That's reverse. And back up to neutral again. Okay, so then it's just a case of doing the nuts up. The rest of the nuts up. You've drained the oil out, measure the oil that's come out, and that's probably going to be about 1 litre-ish, maybe 1.5 litres, depending upon whether on a flat surface or not. Never reuse the oil, putting your oil in again, and you're ready to go. Right, a few last little subjects to cover just before we finish this video off. Firstly, oil. If you've done a ratio change, the oil that's come out of the box, you should measure it and put exactly the same oil back in again. And talking of oils, what type of oil to use? A good 75-90 synthetic is pretty good. Most of the manufacturers that manufacture oil are good. One thing to watch out for is high sulfur content. What sulfur does, it helps the cooling of the gearbox. So a lot of manufacturers or oil producers use it because gearbox oil is 80% cooling, probably about 20% lubricant, there or thereabouts. So if it has too much sulfur in, the gearbox acts as a particle separator and you get all this yellow stuff come out, so the sulfur isn't doing the job that it's supposed to do. So just be a bit wary of that one. If you're in very hot climates, you could probably go up to a 75, 140 or in that sort of area. But for most conditions, a 75-90 is absolutely perfect. Oil quantities, from empty, it's about a 1 3/4 litres. You can go down and you can go up. You don't want to go too much up or too much down. I mean, I have known people run slightly less than 1 litre, but then you can start burning the gearbox up, because the gearbox is a splash gearbox. There's no form of pumping on the gearbox, so the oil that's in there has got no way of cooling. So that's why the oil is quite important. Leading on from that, a subject that not a lot of people think about it, but it's rolling roads. Got to be very careful with rolling roads. They've got their place, they can be extremely useful, but on the FTR and the JFR gearbox, if you take it with the normal oil level in the box, what happens is after running of say 20 minutes, half an hour, all the oil, because the level it's on, migrates to the back of the gearbox. This starves the pinion bearing. The pinion bearing gets hotter and hotter and eventually seizes. That's happened many times. If you're lucky, it's only the bearing. If you're very unlucky, it does the crown wheel and pinion as well, and you're into a lot of money, thousands to get it repaired. So if you are going to go to the rolling road, please put at least an extra litre of oil in and be very careful with transmissions. You can use rolling roads, nothing against them, but you do have to be very, very careful not to overheat the pinion bearing. Okay, so that leads me on. My next video is going to be on the same gearboxes again, JFR FTR range, and it's going to be on the gear selector mechanism, and that should be out in a few weeks. So again, same thing. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.